Let's get some insights out of Johnny Taylor. He's the president and CEO of the Society for Human Resources Management, and he joins us right now. And Johnny, I want to start off with that chart that Caroline had up, and you saw the big spike in the engagement, I guess, if you will, by corporate executives on these political topics during 2020. And it's very obvious, in hindsight at least, that a lot of that came because there was a lot of pressure from customers as well as from employees within those organizations. Are we not seeing that same pressure this election cycle?
No, actually, you're seeing the opposite. It's interesting when we reflect back on the 2020 race. Everyone, frankly, felt the pressure. When I say everyone, corporate executives, CEOs in particular, felt pressure to speak on every issue, right? If you recall, between COVID and whether you mask, whether you return to the office, George Floyd, Asian hate, there was so much going on in 2020, and employees were demanding, essentially, that their leaders speak up, speak out on issues that, frankly, oftentimes had nothing to do with their business. Well, there was one guy back in 2020 who was the CEO of, I think it was Coinbase, one CEO who made the headlines when he said, no politics at work. I'm not going to allow you to talk about it. If it doesn't have to do with work, don't talk about it. And all of the headlines described, oh gosh, a third, as many as a half of his employees quit because he dared to suggest that we not do that. Well, guess what? We're now all saying maybe he was smarter than the rest of them, because what happened is by the CEO taking a position and allowing people to discuss these things at work, we got away from work.
Right.
People, it affected retention, engagement, people's overall happiness at work was impacted because we went into a place that perhaps we shouldn't have in hindsight.
I remember that, Johnny, because my husband is a senior manager and an executive over at Coinbase, and I'm interested from your perspective as to whether now we see more companies doing similar, more executives, and indeed more employees coming in saying, I don't want to show up as my political self, I just want to show up as my employee self, or is it swinging the other way?
No, that part. More and more employees are saying, like, I'm exhausted. I come to work not to continue the fight. Like, I dropped off the kid in the morning, fought with them, I fought with the spouse, et cetera. And then I have to come here and be bombarded with, what do you think about the politics? What do you think about what the Supreme Court did? What do you think about this, that? So employees are resoundingly telling us, we don't want you to have blanket policies that say we can't talk about anything at work, but we'd prefer you just bring the temperature down. Just bring it down. And the other thing that we're hearing, which is really fascinating, is more and more there's been an outcry for civility in the workplace. In fact, we started a big campaign, 1 million civil conversations, because on one hand, we've been telling people it's okay to be your authentic self at work. Well, unfortunately, some people's authentic self is not appropriate for work, and frankly, arguably not appropriate for any place. And so we said, bring the temperature down. Employees are saying, I just want to come here to work, and sure, we can talk about a few things, but when it becomes ugly,
I am curious, though, Johnny, when we talk about how human resources managers have to deal with these issues, we'd be remiss in not pointing out that a lot of the efforts that companies across the board have made for inclusion and diversity in their workplaces, whether it's explicit or just implicit, that some of those issues run directly into the center of our culture wars. And I am curious as to how they're going to square that circle. Even if there isn't the same pressure in 2020, I'm sure you know there are still people kind of picking apart these training programs, these inclusivity disclaimers and other things that these companies make. How are managers supposed to address those issues when at the same time they are maybe fundamental to their corporate ethos?
Oh, they're incredibly fundamental. Our diversity is our strength. And what we've done is decided to have a different shift. There's been a pivot. The conversations are now focusing less on diversity, which by definition means difference. We focus so much on differences, now focusing on inclusion. So more and more, even at SHRM, we talk about inclusion and diversity. Not that you ignore diversity, because we need historically underrepresented groups to have opportunities, but the focus is on inclusion. I often say, as diverse as we've ever been, yet as divided as we've ever been. So what you're seeing human resources leaders and corporate leaders say is, yes, we want diversity, but we've got to ensure that everyone feels included. And that's tough, but it's the goal.
Johnny, we've got about 30 seconds. One piece of advice to bring down temperature if you're trying to manage this.
demand civility, and there has to be serious consequences for employees who engage in incivility at work. It's not enough, though, just to demand it. We've got to show our employees how to be more civil, especially after tonight's debate.
Johnny Taylor, pushing us forward. We thank you, President and CEO of the Society for Human Resources Management, or SHRM, as you said it. Thank you so much for the piece of advice.